الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. To proceed, today's lesson we want to complete the lesson that we started previously regarding al-awzan al-asharatu, or the 10 verb patterns in the Arabic language. In our previous lesson we discussed the first 5, mentioning with regards to each one 3 points. The first being how to form it, the second being the meaning that we derive from that form or pattern, and the third being examples of its usage. Therefore, in this lesson, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will complete the remainder 5. To begin, therefore, number 6 is based upon the third pattern. However, to form it, we add a letter ta. So we say ta fa'ala, ta fa'ala. This pattern, therefore, as demonstrated, is based upon the third, which, if you remember from our previous lesson, it implies affecting someone or something with the fi'l on the verb. The understanding, therefore, is that that thing or that person is present. Tafa'ala is similar, therefore, to fa'ala, except that now the addition of a ta'u, it infers 2 general meanings. The first is what we call mutuality, meaning this action has affected the one who is doing it, and in addition to that, another person. So there are 2 or more parties involved in this action, and they are affecting one another. The second meaning that tafa'ala gives rise to is that it relates to the doer himself. So it doesn't always indicate or infer mutuality, but it relates to the doer, and that they are trying to assume a particular state, and we will give examples of that in a moment. Therefore, the first, regarding mutuality, what do we mean by that? If we take, for example, kataba, which is, as we know, the first form, kataba, it means he wrote. Hasanan, he wrote. So we say kataba al-waladu risalatan, the boy wrote a letter. That's the sentence that we're all familiar with, and kataba is a verb that we are bi'idhnillahi ta'ala have used frequently and we're very familiar with. But it's the first form. The third pattern or form of kataba would be kataba. Kataba. What does kataba mean? As we said, it implies the presence of someone or something else present who is affected by that action. So we could say, for example, kataba, which means literally that he negotiated. And the negotiation is usually in the form of writing, which is why you have the root, it is formed from the root of kaf, ta and ba. So we could say kataba ar-rajulu sharikahu. Sharikahu would therefore be the object. Sharikahu. Kataba ar-rajulu sharikahu, meaning the men negotiated in the form of writing sharikahu, his partner. Sharikun means a partner, and sharikahu in this instance is his partner. However, that's the third pattern. We're talking about the sixth. The sixth pattern of kataba, or how it would be altered, would be takataba. Takataba. What does takataba therefore mean? It means that two people or more, they communicated with one another. Right? So the meaning is slightly different to the third form or pattern, kataba, but it's more similar to kataba, which means he wrote. Takataba means he wrote to somebody. So you could say, for example, takataba as-sadiqani. Sadiqani. So takataba on the sixth pattern, which is similar to the third pattern, it involves, as we said, mutuality. That you have two or more people performing that action with one another. So takataba here, as-sadiqani. As-sadiqani is the dual al-muthanna of sadiqun, which means a friend. Sadiqani, the dual, two friends, takataba, they communicated with one another in the form of writing, or it's generally used to mean in the form of writing. But if you note how it is used, we have a single fa'ilun. It comprises of as-sadiqani, two friends. Therefore, that is, as we said, the first meaning that we derive from the sixth pattern. To illustrate another meaning of the sixth pattern, take, for example, dhakara, that we have mentioned previously and are familiar with. It means he mentioned or he remembered. Dhakara, and that's the first pattern. The third pattern of that therefore would be dhakara. Dhakara. Now, what dhakara means is it's a specific type of remembrance. For example, dhakara at-talibu ad-darsa. Darsa. Dhakara at-talibu ad-darsa, meaning the student dhakara ad-darsa. So what does dhakara mean? It means he made particular attention to it. He remembered it, he memorized it, he understood it. All of the matters required of a student regarding a lesson, that's what dhakara means. However, the sixth pattern, based upon the third, tadhakara, is slightly different in that, as we said, it refers to mutuality, a discussion between themselves. So you could say tadhakara an-nasu al-amra. Tadhakara an-nasu al-amra, meaning the people, tadhakara, mention to one another, al-amra, the matter. Here tadhakara implies or infers the meaning of mutuality, an action performed between a group of people, two or more. That is the first meaning of pattern 6, mutuality. The second meaning of tafa'ala is where it refers to the fa'ilun performing or assuming that particular state. For example, the verb tadhahara. Tadhahara. What does tadhahara mean? Tadhahara it means he pretended. So you could say تذاكر أنه نائم. Right? تظاهر, he pretended, أنه, that he, تظاهر أنه نائم. تظاهر, he pretended, أنه, that he, نائم, is asleep. So here, تظاهر, we're not now referring the action back to another person. What we're doing is the individual who's performing the action is assuming a particular state. تظاهر, pretending that he is asleep. Similarly, تناسى. تناسى indicates a person, as you probably guessed, from nasiya, which means he forgot. Nasiya, he forgot. Therefore, tanasa indicates he tried to forget. Tanasa al-amra, he tried or gave the impression that he forgot. Al-amra, the matter, or al-qadiyyata, the affair, or al-mas'alata, the issue, or whatever it is that he's trying to forget, then tanasa would give rise to that meaning. This is the second example, or the second meaning of the sixth pattern. So the first is mutuality, the second is assuming a particular state or pretending to be in that state. Sixth pattern. Seventh pattern is formed by beginning with an alif, and the point to note here is, that's the seventh pattern, the point to note here is that some people write it incorrectly with a hamzatu qat on the bottom, and it doesn't have a hamzatu qat, it has a hamzatu wasl. It just has this below it. Why? Because if it's preceded by another word, then you don't pronounce the hamza. So what is this form? It is infa'ala. 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 As you can see, it is based upon fa'ala, but we have an alif with a hamza, and then we have a noon, a sakina afterwards, and it gives a meaning of, or what does it imply? Well, in fa'ala, it represents submission to an action or effect. And it's actually the passive form of fa'ala, the second pattern. So we're going to discuss what that means in more detail. What does it mean when we talk about it being passive in meaning to the second form? If we take the second form or pattern and we say fajjara, fajjara, what does fajjara mean? It means he or it exploded in whatever, exploded in rage, exploded in words, or whatever it is, he exploded. It means he exploded, or it exploded. Now, the seventh pattern, as we said, is the passive form of this. What does passive mean? It means not active, not he doing that action or it doing it, but it happening to it. So how do we form it? How would we form the seventh pattern on the basis of fajjara? We would say in fajjara. In fajjara. In fajjara means he or it exploded. Right, so how do we now explain this by way of example to clarify it? Well, we can take the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned وَإِذِ اسْتَسْقَى مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ فَقُلْنَا اضْرِبْ بِعَصَاكَ الْحَجَرِ. And remember when Musa alayhi salam, he sought water for his people, so we said idrib, strike, bi'asak, with your staff, al-hajar, the rock. Then what did Allah Azza wa Jalla say? He said فَانْفَجَرَتْ مِنْهُ إِثْنَةَ عشرة عينا عشرة عينا منه اثنتا عشرة عينا. Now the point to note, as I mentioned here, because it begins with Hamzatu al-wasl, we don't pronounce that, we say فَانْفَجَرَتْ. Why is this al-mu'annith, female? Because the object, the thing which has exploded from it, is aynan, a spring. In fact, there were 12 springs, but the point is aynun, a spring like an eye, is a female word. So note the difference in meaning between infajarat or infajara and fajjara, which was the second form. Fajjara means he or it exploded. Infajara means it was or it had exploded, i.e. something had been done to it. And that's what we mean by passive. That's the difference between active and passive. Active is when the person or the thing is doing it. Passive is when it is done to it. In this example, what has happened to this rock, al-hajar, is that it has submitted, and that's what we said at the beginning, that one of the definitions of the seventh pattern is that it's submitting to an action or an effect. So here, after Musa alayhi salam, he struck the stone or the rock with his staff, it submitted to that striking by the permission and the commandment of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and infajarat minhu, and it exploded from it, 12 springs. 12 springs exploded from it. They gushed forth, and therefore they provided a source of water for the Israelites. But the point to note is the use of infajara here, the seventh form. And as I said, it can be used for other purposes too. So you could say, for example, infajara fulanun bakiyan. What does that mean? Infajara, he exploded. Who exploded? Fulanun, so and so. Bakiyan, this is al-hal, his state, crying. So and so exploded crying. Hasanan. So that's an example of the seventh pattern. Another interesting verb that illustrates this point is infatara. Infatara means torn apart. Infatara. Infatara means he or it was torn apart. Again, it's passive, so it's not active. He is not the one doing it, or it is not the one doing it. It is, or he is being done to. And that's interesting because we read in Surah Al-Muzammil, when Allah Azza wa Jalla said, As-sama'u منفطر به. السماء, there's a hamza missing there. السماء منفطر به. Note that منفطر is اسم فاعل of انفطر. So it's based upon this verb here. منفطر is اسم فاعل, the doer of انفطر. So it does illustrate the point in meaning. Why? Because here Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying that as-sama'u, the sky, is munfatirun. It is cleft asunder, meaning it is torn apart. Right? So it has happened to it that the sky has been torn apart. Of course, all of these matters occur by the command of Allah Azza wa Jalla, which is a reason we said it's submission to an action or an effect. So as-sama'u munfatirun bihi. And what's interesting is the use of bi here. Bi is either, as we said previously, a-dharfiyya or a-sababiyya. A-dharfiyya meaning it relates to a time or a place. A-sababiyya, it relates to a reason. So what does that mean in this context? Well, if we understand that as-sama'u munfatirun, which means that the sky is torn apart, well, why? Or we could argue, when is it going to be torn apart, right? Those would be the two questions. Why is it being torn apart? Or when is it being torn apart? The be here, it responds to both of them. If you understand be to referring to a-dharfiyya, meaning when, then the be here refers to in. The he refers to Yawm al-Qiyamah, the final day. So Allah Azza wa Jalla in effect is saying that as-sama'u munfatirun, that the sky is torn apart in Yawm al-Qiyamah, or on Yawm al-Qiyamah, as we would say in English. If the be here is a sababiyya, meaning relating to the reason, then the meaning of it is that the as-sama'u, the sky, munfatirun, is torn apart because of the severity and the greatness of Yawm al-Qiyamah. Because of that, it is torn into pieces or apart, which illustrates the greatness and the severity of that day. But the point that we need to understand from this is the use of munfatirun, which is based upon infatara, which is on the seventh pattern. So to summarize, therefore, the seventh pattern, it is passive, based upon the second pattern, i.e. something done to it. And that thing done to it will be as a result of a submission to an action or to an effect. That is the seventh. The eighth pattern, that relates to ifta'ala, which we write, again note that this is a hamzatu al-wasl. So if you're reading this type of verb, then you are going to not pronounce the first alif here. So it is ifta'ala. Ifta'ala, and again that you can see it's fa'ala, but with the addition of an alif and a ta after the first letter. To make ifta'ala. So, what does ifta'ala mean? Ifta'ala, it relates to, so we know how it's formed, but what does it mean? Well, it relates to something done with detail or precision. What does that mean in practice? If we say, for example, sami'a. Sami'a, what does it mean? We know it's the first pattern, fa'ala. It means he heard, sami'a. The eighth pattern would therefore be of sami'a is istama'a. Istama'a. Hasanan. Istama'a from Sami'a. Sami'a means he heard. Istama'a, as we said, it means to perform the action with great care or attention. So therefore, istama means he listened carefully. And we know, based upon the ayah in Surah Az-Zumar, where Allah Azza wa Jalla said, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ. الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَ. الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ. Those who يَسْتَمِعُونَ. So that is the plural mudari' present of istama'a. And it means, as we said, listen carefully. So those are the ones who, when Al-Quran is recited, يَسْتَمِعُونَ, they listen carefully. Similarly in Surah Al-A'raf, وَإِذَا قُرِيَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. Here, يَسْتَمِعُونَ, they listen carefully to al-qawla, the statement. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ, and then they follow it. Note the use of يَسْتَمِعُونَ, which is the present plural third person male of istama'a, that illustrates his point of performing the action with great care. Similarly, we could mention arafa. Arafa, which means he knew, and that's a general knowing. But if we take the 8th pattern, it is i'tarafa. 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 If we use our principle of taking the meaning and applying precision and detail, then i'tarafa is used to mean acknowledgement or a confession. So it's not just knowing something, but it is acknowledging it and confessing, meaning communicating to somebody else that you are aware of that particular issue. Another example, and this confuses many people, and it's actually quite interesting, the distinction between them, is akhadha, which we know is based upon the first form or pattern, and ittakhadha, which is based upon this one, the 8th. Ittakhadha. So akhadha means he took. Ittakhadha also means he took. That's how it's translated into English. But what does it mean in Arabic, particularly with regards to the subtleties and differences or the nuance in meaning between the different patterns? Akhadha being the first pattern and ittakhadha being the 8th pattern. What does it mean? Well, akhadha is a general taking. So if this pen, for example, was upon the table and I took it, I would say akhadhtu al-qalama. If my phone was on the floor and I took it, I would say akhadhtu hatifi min al-ardi. I took my phone from the earth or the ground. And it also implies a degree of control or authority. So the ayah, for example, in Surah Hud, where Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَكَذَلِكَ أَخْذُ رَبِّكَ إِذَا أَخَذَ الْقُرَى. وَكَذَلِكَ أَخْذُ رَبِّكَ إِذَا أَخَذَ الْقُرَى. Note that akhadha is mentioned here. وَكَذَلِكَ أَخْذُ رَبِّكَ. And such is أخذ ربك, the taking of your Lord, إذا when أخذ القرى وهي ظالمة, as Allah Azza wa Jalla said in Surah Hud, إذا when أخذ القرى, he takes a village, or actually al-qura here is plural of qaryatun, villages. But أخذ here is a general taking, which has been made manifest out of the authority and the power of Allah Azza wa Jalla. أخذ. But note the difference in usage with ittakhadha. The ayah or the portion of the ayah in Surah An-Nisa, where Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إبراهيم خليلا. وَاتَّخَذَ الله إبراهيم. So اتخذ classic الجملة الفعلية فعل فاعل مفعول به. اتخذ, if we just translate it as he took, as is often the case, then what difference is it in meaning between the اتخذ here and أخذ here? There would be no difference. But it's more than that, isn't it? Because as we said, this pattern implies a taking or something with great detail or precision. Often it implies love and a specific choice. So here, Allah Azza wa Jalla, he took Ibrahim as Khalilan. It's the second maf'ulun bihi in this ayah. Khalilan. So takhadha has more than just akhadha as a meaning. It implies taking with precision, carefully, with love and a particular selection. And that of course was the case with Ibrahim alayhi salam, as he was Imam al-Tawheed. He was the one that we were commanded to follow. ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam was told to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam and take him as an example. So he was not just an ordinary selection. His selection was with great care and consideration, which is why ittakhadha is used. Similarly, if we're going to use ittakhadha to imply a great care or a selective occurrence but with disastrous results, take the example الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا الْإِجْلَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned regarding إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا الْإِجْلَ. What does this mean? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ, indeed those who ittakhadhu, they took al-ijla, the calf, meaning the Israelites who took the calf as a Lord, as a God besides Allah Azza wa Jalla, سِينَ لَهُمْ غَضَبٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ, as Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned in Surah Al-Araf. Point to note is that ittakhadhu is used here. They took, but if we just translate as it took, does it convey the complete meaning of what we want to say? Well, the answer is no. Why? Because when they took that calf, they didn't just select any object. No, they fashioned it, they molded it using a particular material, and then they showed their devotion in worship to it. So their ittikhad, their taking, was a very particular action and not just akhadha. So we hope, inshallah ta'ala, that illustrates a difference between the first and the 8th pattern. The 9th pattern that we need to discuss is based upon the first, fa'ala, but again we begin with an alif, with hamzatul wasl, and then it is if Allah, and this generally is used for conveying the coloration of something. Meaning when something becomes white or something becomes black or red and so on and so forth. So either something has assumed a particular color, that's its first common usage, or the second is a particular defect, and we will, like with the others, illustrate by way of example. So the first, therefore, coloration, iswadda, based upon if'al. Iswadda. What does iswadda mean? It means he or it became black. Similarly, ibyadda. Ibyadda. He or it became white. Ihmarra, and so on and so forth. Ihmarra meaning he or it became red. Isfarra, he or it became yellow, and so on and so forth. So the first meaning that if'al gives rise to is that of being a particular color, and that's actually mentioned in Al-Quran. In Surah Al Imran, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned Yawma tabyaddu wujuhun wa taswaddu wujuhun. In this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned the day tabyaddu wujuhun, when faces tabyaddu, they become whitened. So tabyaddu is used here, and it is al-mudari, the present tense of ibyadda. So yawma tabyaddu wujuhun, faces become whitened. And this is in the female form because wujuhun is the plural of wajhun. It is therefore an inanimate object and is treated as a single female. Hence tabyaddu. Similarly, wa taswaddu wujuhun, and faces become blackened. Again, wujuhun is plural, therefore taswaddu is the female form of iswadda in the present tense. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ, and then those whose faces become blackened, أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْفُرُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned that those faces who had become blackened as a result of their unbelief, so taste the punishment because of your unbelief. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ ابْيَضَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ فَفِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And as for those whose faces become whitened, then they shall be in Allah's mercy. But the point to note is the use of iswadda and the biyadda of the form if'ala. And similarly, we said that the other usage of if'ala, the meaning it conveys, is that of a defect or a disability. For example, a wajja. If we say wajja, from iwaj, it means crooked. It also can mean he or it became lame. So defects like iwaj and colors such as iswadda and ibyadda are based upon the ninth form if'al. And the final form is based again upon the first fa'ala, but it is preceded by ist, and again it has hamzatul wasl استفعل. استفعل. Istaf'ala, this form, it relates to seeking something. That, at-talab, that is the general meaning of this form, istaf'ala, to seek to do something. So either it's going to refer to that, to seeking, but the other usage of it is to describe a particular state. So the most common will be seeking, but the secondary meaning, which is slightly less common, is to describe a particular state of a person or a thing. In terms of seeking something, we know that kharaja means he exited. So if we say istakhraja, it is going to be related in meaning. Istakhraja, it's going to be related in meaning to kharaja. Ist, as I said, generally it refers to seeking something. So how are we going to combine the meaning? Ist means seeking, kharaja means he exited, so actually it means he extracted. And it means he extracted with ease. So istakhraja, he extracted with ease, and it's based upon kharaja. Similarly, the one that we're all familiar with because we recite it frequently in our prayers, it's in Surah Al-Fatiha. It's based upon aana. What does aana mean? It means he helped or assisted. We say in our prayers in Surah Al-Fatiha, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. So nasta'een is the present tense of ista'ana. 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 So fa'ana means he assisted. Ista'ana means he sought assistance. It's actually quite simple, the 10th form, because as I said, whenever you see a fi'lun of this pattern beginning with ist, then you know that it will usually have something to do with seeking. The other very common one that we encounter is ghafara. Ghafara, and which means he forgave. So therefore Taghfara means he sought forgiveness. And we all know that one. Istaghfara, because we say it frequently. And there are a multitude of other examples that we could mention. That is in relation to seeking something, because that's the first and most common meaning of the 10th pattern. The other one, as I said, it's assuming a particular state or having a particular state. So for example, something that's pertinent to us studying Arabic is Ista'raba. Ista'raba, as perhaps you've already guessed, Araba, it relates to being an Arab. Ista'raba. So the one who learns the Arabic language, they say Ista'raba, he has become an Arab. Ista'raba means therefore to assume that particular state. Similarly, istahsana. Istahsana. I forgot the noon. Istahsana. 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 Hasuna is from hasuna, meaning to be good. Istahsana means to consider to be good. So he considered something to be good. And similarly, there are numerous other examples. But the 10th form, in summary, therefore, either it will relate to seeking something or being in a particular state, such as ista'raba or istahsana. We hope, inshallah ta'ala, that these 10 verbs, as the brother Jazallahu requested, will help you to have a greater understanding of verbs and their meanings when you encounter them in your studies. They are here in a list form. We did try and mention numerous examples to put the definitions into context, but the true learning and understanding is when you sit down and try and obtain maximum benefit from your reading or your speaking by being able to identify the individual words and the meanings and the inferences and so on and so forth. That onus and that responsibility is upon yourself. All that we can do is present by way of information their forms, their meanings and examples, but ultimately, in order to derive maximum benefit, you do have to work hard to remember them, to memorize them, their meanings, and then to identify them in the texts that either you read or the words that you use in order to speak. We shall conclude on that point. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.